everybody. I'm Lucas Bean, and this is a Building Strong NFT Communities. I'd like to introduce our basically our panel over here. I'm going to start from right and go left. Tyler?
Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Stockfield. Many know me as NFTs Anonymous on Twitter and other social medias. I'm a Web3 consultant and ambassador, and just looking to really get the most out of this Web3 technology, encourage best practices, and really focus on inclusivity and education.
Hi, my name is Roane, or Ty239 if you're in the Bs. I believe in decentralization of the world and empowering the developing countries.
Hey y'all, my name is Mec, and I'm an educator in the Web3 NFT space. My goal this year is to onboard 10,000 non-white guys into Web3, and doing it through educating, empowering, and hopefully upskilling folks who are in the Web2 space to figure out how to use these tools to impact in the real world.
Hi, my name is Tal Navarro. I own a digital marketing agency. I've been doing it for the past 16 years, and I'm focusing on NFTs and Web3. I'm a big advocate, host, and investor in NFT world. Big advocate for women in Web3 and for anything related to that world.
Hi, everybody. I am Brooke Lacey, just Brooke J. Lacey on the socials. I don't have a avatar. I am a technologist for the better part of the last 25 years. I worked on the Y2K bug. That's my flex. You're welcome for saving you from impending doom. You're welcome. So, this has been an easy transition for me as a tech advisor. Been doing that for many, many years in the nonprofit space. So now I get to, because these are businesses that people are starting, right? I get to advise them on everything from business to the technology as a dev. And then, of course, maybe not of course, but most of you know that I have a fairly large TikTok following as a Gen X single mom. Who knew? So we'll show you that later. No, we won't.
Howdy. My name, I'm Austin. I know a lot of you in here know me, but I just want to say I'm a Web3 innovator and educator. I focus in learning myself and educating as many people as possible about Web3, blockchain, DeFi, and NFT technology. It's something I'm really passionate about. I spend a massive amount of time learning about it, as well as just bringing adoption and teaching others and just in conversations. I am excited to be here. I look forward to the discussion.
And I'm your moderator, Lucas Bean, former head of global marketing for Atari, also global or marketing head of Sony Pictures. I now own a company called Render Labs. Been in the NFT and Web3 space since August of 2020, helping one-of-one artists, helping NFT projects, and helping Fortune 1000 companies onboard into Web3 and into the metaverse. So glad to be here. The inaugural NFT AZ. This is really exciting, and just really looking forward to getting to know everybody here. And with that said, let's start off with our first question. Building strong NFT communities again, guys. The hardest thing I think you could actually do is building a community around your NFT project. One of the hardest things. And I actually want to know from our panelists right now, how would you define a strong NFT community? Very vague question, open-ended answer. I'm looking for Tyler. He's a very strong expert in building community in the NFT space. So Tyler, I'd like to know from you first. What do you think, my friend?
Sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, so I've been in the NFT space for just over a year, and through my experiences, I have been able to identify, some strong characteristics of a sustainable and, just a well-intentioned NFT community. I believe that it really comes down to finding a way to create an emotional attachment with your audience, you know, your investors, your consumers, and that by doing so, you help people look beyond just the markets, and that's where the real staying power is being able to have that more intimate, like personal connection, something that is a shared vision or ethos or mission of everyone involved, and being able to center around that type of energy is really powerful. And I've seen it, you know, time and time again in the NFT space. And I believe that just having something beyond the art that everyone is able to focus on is really powerful, and that can definitely kind of support having a sustainable NFT community.
Tal, what do you think?
I think, first of all, every word is to the point. I do want to add to that it's not only the emotional part, but it's also the activities and the things that you see that are happening inside the community. So I saw a lot of communities that have been built from the beginning, and they were, you would think that that project, maybe you're not sure if it's going to succeed or not, but under the surface, so many things are happening. So you not always see an active community because it happens in Discord, it happens in the Twitter, happens in the DMs or in different groups, where at some point suddenly you have an explosion and that NFT project is popping out. That's because the NFT community is so strong and it's so united and has such a mission to succeed and bring that NFT project to the front, that at the end of the day, it is a big success. I saw a lot of NFT projects that I was actually bought one, you know, one of them, and I thought, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I saw how the community is behaving, and I was part of the Discord, part of the conversations, part of the DM groups where it's all the time active, and as of today, they're really pumping up and they're really succeeding. So it's all because the community kept on growing and be evolving all the time. It's not just a one-time flip, but it's a long-term relationship between the people in the community and between the team, the founder, the artists, and everyone involved.
If you don't, I want to jump in because I might be one of the only folks up here who doesn't have a project out yet. And my optics of what it looks like to have a strong community might be skewed, but I've built that, one, as an educator, there's not necessarily a focus on a PFP or artwork, right? It's the idea that at some point we all are contributing to shaping the space. And I think that to see people activate around that, what I've started to do is, you know, when I'm educating and sort of walking people into this opportunity, it's the same way that you would approach launching a cryptocurrency. You'd have a white paper that explains what you're solving for, what is the problem that you're solving for. And if you approach this space, specifically the NFT space, from that perspective, you end up like galvanizing people around an idea, and that becomes the incentivization. You don't actually have to do much. You don't have to play a game or offer people percentages. Like those sort of, you know, economic mechanics don't really factor in when people are galvanized around solving an issue. And so from my perspective, like, your community is strongest when it's centered around a common cause, pain point, or something that people can really relate to and get behind.
We're going to go back and forth. One side.
Go for
male.
it.
What was that?
Go ahead. Ladies first.
Listen, these are businesses that people are starting. So just like in any other business, your community are your customers. Let's just be honest about that. And when we build a customer base in any business, they need to know, like, and trust us. Like, how many times have you heard that in the entrepreneur world? Know, like, and trust. So regardless of whether you are doxxed or not, or whatever the case is, if your customer base doesn't know, like, and trust you, you have no community. So when we are honest about the fact that these are businesses and they require all of the pieces that a business entails, PR, management, community management, all of those things, you have to get what's in it for them. What is in it for your customers, which are now your community? I think it's a simple process.
Yeah, I think for me, it's generic, right? These NFTs, they're going to live on the blockchain forever. So when NFT community starts, understanding it's going to live past your lifetime, right? And you want that generic following. You don't want someone in your community or a large group of people in your community that are just in it to flip, right? You want people to come into your community with the same vision, the same morals, and the same, future that they're looking towards. For me, that's the most important thing to attract to your community. And of course, you can't stop, the other people coming in, but they'll leave, right? Because remember, it's going to be here forever, right? It's going to live and die on that blockchain. So that for me, it's the generic following and not, attracting the wrong people. There's a lot of good points that everybody said up here. And one thing, when it comes to community, that word is almost overused nowadays. But community, communities have been around for a very long time, since the beginning of mankind. But with utilizing NFTs with communities is something that's still brand new, and I think extremely early, that we haven't seen exactly the strongest or the most powerful point when it comes to building NFT communities. It's still new, and I think we're all still figuring it out as we're going. A couple of things, when it comes to leading an NFT project, you got to keep it in a sense of a servant leadership, to where you are actively participating with the people in the community, and you're all rallying around each other and supporting each other for, like a lot of you said, an ethos, a mission. There's a lot of good things that can happen when rallying people together and utilizing each other's talents, skills, resources to build something and fulfill a mission that you all believe in. So I think some of the things when it comes to defining a strong NFT community is active participation, is servant leadership, or just being able to assist and just being able to sacrifice some of your talents and resources to each other for the betterment of the project, and as well as realizing that we're still learning. So there's no exact answer. We're all still learning this together. And as we continue to innovate and build NFT communities, there's going to be a lot of very powerful communities that come out of it. Right now, the biggest thing right now is social media activity is what defines it. And we're starting to transition to in real life events, and as well as utilizing each other's further business experience outside of social media activity.
So just to echo what Austin said real quick and other speakers, one thing with Web3 is that we don't believe in absolutes. It's not black and white. Like, there's not just one right answer. There is definitely morals and ethics along the way that can support having something that's more sustainable, something that is more positive, a better contribution to the space. However, a one-of-one artist and the type of connection, the type of relationship they're going to have with their community may not be the same as that of a 10,000 PFP collection, or a play to earn game, and the type of relationship, the type of dynamics that they're going to offer. So a couple things that I think are really important that are uniform across the board are things like effective and consistent communication, and having a plan, having coordination going in, understanding, as others had said, that this is a business, this is a startup company. And so when you put out your roadmap, when you put out your white paper, others should view that as a pitch deck, and they're buying into what you're promising. But if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the resources to actually fulfill those promises, that's what we're seeing, unfortunately, in the space currently. And we're trying to, like I said before, as others had said, encourage more education, more awareness, and that's going to lead to those better practices and more sustainable projects.
Yeah, and to touch on what Mec said is, I hate incentivization, right? Marketing using incentivization. For me, it's like you take an NFT community and it's 10,000, and you have that NFT, that's incentivization enough, because now you're part of that community, and it's like, what are we building? Are we all innovating? What are we doing together? And if you're in that NFT community and you're not wanting to do that, you need to think about why you have your NFT, right? Because if the collection's 5,000, you have 5,000 people wanting to build something amazing, right? And that's the important thing when you're buying into a project, is if there's 10,000 people, those 10,000 people are now some of your best friends, because what the hell are we building, right? And that's when you buy into an NFT project, that's what you have. You have the opportunity to build out that community, innovate, and see what we can build together, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody has a vested interest. Everybody that buys into your project actually has a vested interest of making that community successful, right? And we're all looking for commonalities in life, right? At the end of the day, NFT, if you own the same NFT I own, we now are like have something in common. We all can relate to each other. Everybody's looking to relate to one another and feel like not left out. So again, show up where you don't belong. One day you will. So again, that's what a strong NFT community is, just a group of people having a vested interest in succeeding, making that community succeed. And I think you guys all really said it very well. So nicely done. Question goes to Tal. What is a single best practice commonly overlooked that you can make, that could make or break an NFT community? It could be anything. What do you think of it? What single best practice that's commonly overlooked?
Well, when it comes to there are a bunch of them, but if I'm thinking about a specific one, it's actually having a purpose, having the emotional connection to the project. So I see a lot of PFP projects and a lot of big collections that are just there to make the flip, or just there to there have no story behind it. So when you create NFT project, you have to really understand who's your audience, what kind of attachment are they going to have to your project. I'm going to actually give an example. It's a project that I love. It's called the Women Rise. I am not involved in that. I own a piece, but I'm not involved in that in any way. But I just really love the way that they work and building the community. So the creator name is Maliha, and she's a Pakistan American author, and she created this NFT collection in order to bring awareness to women's rights and to educate girls on anything related to be independent and independent financially and educationally. And there is a purpose behind her NFT project. There is a story. There is a community. And the beautiful thing that she does, she's actually leveraging the Web2 in order to bring people and the education to Web3. So she goes to her social media platforms and she's taking part of groups. She's educating through, I just see the way that they're evolving, and she's educating through videos and through communities that she's involved in. So at the end of the day, she has built a community that it's not only collectors, not only holders, but actually, women who are interested in learning about the Web3 and in learning about empowering women and talking about women's rights and bringing them to the front. And she's doing so many beautiful things in the space, at least to what I see, as someone from the side who's following her community, that this is the strength. When you create a community that based on emotion, based on something that so many people are resonate with it, and you have a niche, you have a purpose, and you have a long-term roadmap, and you are keep leveraging, keep bringing value, keep creating the community keeping the community united, and creating this beautiful gathering of energies, that's when really a community is going to succeed. It's not about, like you said, it's not about the giveaways, it's not about the incentive all the time. Of course, it's part of the marketing tools that could be used. Of course it is great to bring it out, but in a way that it's not the main thing. The main thing in a community is really to build it upon a purpose, upon an emotion, and upon a story that people can resonate and follow it for the long run.
What do you think, Austin?
I said it in the last round, but I think one thing that we're all talking about right now is almost specific of 10,000 generative NFT projects with these communities. But when it comes to NFT communities, there's a lot of different aspects to it. You have one artist, like Tyler said, then you have actual, like the real estate projects, then you have other different types of communities. But one that in this case, and I think in all of them, is the single best thing that you can have within one is active participation, because you can have the greatest artwork, you can have the greatest marketing, you can have the greatest development, greatest technology, but if the people that are holding, the token holders do not buy into the purpose or whatever the mission is of the NFT project, then that can make or break a project. So I'm going to say active participation as far as my answer.
Yeah, I would add to that the interactivity between the folks in the community, right? Because I think that's what gets overlooked, in my opinion, the most, is how do your community members get to meet and interact with one another. I think that's where the gem of being part of a community is, right? It's like if you are following a project because you identify with it, what you have to realize is that everyone else in that community has done the same thing. So then there's a value that you have in the, in a good 10K project, you probably have 6,000 holders, right? You've got 6,000 people who feel the same way about something for whatever reason, whether it's the visual representation, the cause, what have you. But I can speak from my perspective, being a fan of rare pizzas, of Deadfellas. I actually am part of that team now because I was such a fan. And what I discovered was the thing that turned me onto it, which was the visual of it, right? Like I'm a designer by trade. And so I was like, man, this line work and like the thoughtfulness and the shadows. And I was just drawn to the art. There's a ton of creatives in that community because we all saw the same thing. And so now I have access to 6,000 other people who see that. And like, what do you get to do with that? And I think that's what gets overlooked is because collectively you all rally around the project, but internally there's teams of people who are now putting their own projects out, right? So within our community, there's several people who, like a team of 4, just did a whole project called Dead Decor, which is building assets to make little rooms and houses for our dead fellas. So now we can all like have a custom home. So if you went to my Twitter page, on my banner, I have this crib that was designed by people in it because they felt so compelled to make something for us all together, right? So like that's what I think gets overlooked. And it's the kind of thing that you don't have a formula for, but if you build something that has a very vested interest in communicating a specific idea. So I think when they were designing it, they were like, we want to make this appeal to us as people who design. When you communicate that well, that's who you attract. And then within that, it's like, how do you make sure that those people all get to meet each other?
What do you think?
What do you think? I'm going to be that person and say I kind of disagree, mainly because my job is to advise for these companies. And I really, really believe that core structure of, first of all, the technology behind it, because it doesn't matter how good your art is. If your tech sucks, you're not going anywhere. So that core group of people, that core belief system with what they're doing will make or break. And if we're calling out projects, just full disclosure, I am not paid. I'm not a paid influencer. I have millions and millions of views and hundreds of thousands of followers, but I don't believe in being a paid influencer. I think it's ridiculous. There are some out there, and it's really important. But the core team for the Bunny Buddies, say that 10 times real fast. I love the way they do it. They are friends of mine. I bought into the project, but I love the way that they are transparent about what's happening. They spent hours and hours and hours on AMAs, and they're just, the way that they're running their business is beautiful. And my friends at New Earth Media as well, that I am their advisor. So I think it's that core functionality of the business and them understanding how they work together in order to build that up. And of course, I think the developers need to be on point.
I think that for me, especially with new projects coming out, it's under promise and oversell, right? Don't come out and say we're gonna be the next best metaverse. Like, you got to get in. Like, come on, the metaverse is still a little ways out, right? So just say like the end goal, like Tal was saying. So if you want to change the world, you want to change the developing third world countries, make that the goal, right? How are we getting there? We're gonna find out together, right? Don't make all these milestones, right? I personally don't like roadmaps. I like a laid out roadmap of, a couple things, but when I see a bunch of roadmap check marks, it's like you're putting yourself in a box, right? And you have to be able to pivot in this space. You never know what's going to happen, especially with the technology advancing and more things happening. So for me, it's overselling and underpitching, right? And also utilizing Twitter, like the spaces, your community has to be getting involved in that. And then next for me is, I think, those communities getting on the ground, right? Getting out of those Twitter spaces and doing things like this, going to meetups, going to other countries, and just spreading innovation and cryptocurrency and how it can change the world, and like informing people, because what is it, like 2% maybe of the world is involved right now in this space. So there's gonna be a lot of things coming.
Crazy small.
Crazy small, right?
Hey,
So,
Tyler, what do you think? What is one best practice, my man?
Yeah, so you probably know where I'm going with this. From my perspective, I have a unique position getting to see a lot behind the scenes, but also being involved daily with the social media, the influencing, quote unquote, being very forward facing with the community. And the one thing that it comes down to, the most important characteristic in Web3 is transparency. Because if you're not transparent, you're already dead in the water, because it's the first time you get caught. Your reputation is everything in this space. And so, I mean, Lucas and I see it on a daily basis as far as our peers who are making short-sighted decisions for a short-term gain and not really taking into consideration the long-term consequences of those actions. And it's the project founders and, their marketers and whatever else that are doing similar things, whether it be with, manipulating discords or social media followings, or doing, some other like toxic manipulative practices with the way that they actually attract their community in the first place prior to even launching. There's a lot that we'll talk tomorrow with the future of Web3, but that's a good basis right there, is transparency, and that, but from both a project perspective from the founders, but also their community, the people that they're having be their ambassadors, their influencers, just being upfront and honest as far as their relationship, and also of course compensation and other incentives.
If I can, I just want to touch that, because I 100% agree with you, but I also think that there's a short-term memory in the space, because while you have all of that, you still have people who have done all of those things still operating, right?
Over and over again.
Right. And so it's it's the kind of thing where I wouldn't say it's the most overlooked thing, but it is important, right? Because to maintain a level of trust with your community, to have a relationship with them where they continue to support you, being transparent is everything, right? Letting them know where you're going, if you have a roadblock, if something's not working, if things are going to be late. All of those things are important, because people have, in short, language, invested in you, right? So you want people to be informed about whatever the next steps are and if they're not going to hit. But there are very many people who have done all of the dirt. And it's because of the transparency that it, right? So you see it all, and for some reason they still are allowed to execute in ways that don't make sense, but it does eventually. I think it does catch up. I think
that's what I was going to say. So
3-4
that's what's unique
strikes
about the blockchain, is that it's actually an archive, right? And so we're going to see over time that people are going to have either credentials, or they're going to have a track record. They're going to have a reputation that's going to follow them, because while the social media space, the day-to-day culture is going to be very fluid, the blockchain remains as a constant. That's very concrete. And so there's really no way around, if you do something illegitimate with the blockchain, then that's a risk that I don't encourage taking if you want to be successful in this space long term.
I would love to echo that, but I don't agree. just because I think humans in general have short-term memories when this stuff comes out. If you think about it, I mean, I don't want to drop names here, but there's a social influencer who's done some nefarious things in what they call Web 2, which is, I mean, Web 2 and Web 3 are just inflection points within the web. So there's really not many changes have happened. But that guy now is looked at as a demigod. He's amazing. He's the best thing since sliced bread. Yet 5 or 6 years ago, he was scamming people with something. So I really believe people have short-term memories, and especially in this concatenated space where NFTs go from 0.05 ETH at mint, and then they rise up to an ETH literally within days, and then all of a sudden crash back down and disappear. People could literally, because people are operating, especially under pseudonyms, a profile picture in, warm pizza or hot popcorn, whatever it may be, they can get away with doing it again. I mean, look at Beanie Maxi is a perfect example. I don't want to call out Beanie Maxi, but that guy did it over and over and over and over.
Well, that's why you have to do.
what?
That's why you have to do such a big research. That's why people always say, do your own research. It's not just a phrase. It's not just some words that people are saying. It's not just a cool slang in NFT. It is so important, to really go ahead and dive into the history of the person, the history of his community, of his name, of his company, of whatever he has put his hands around. And whenever you are diving into a new project, and it's not even about a project, if you want to work with an influencer, if you want to work with someone who has big following, and you can also take a look at his account and see some people are just buying shit and just not really an influencer, not really influencers. So you want to make sure that you're checking the engagement, the history, who is involved with. There are so many names out there I'm not even gonna dive into, but you have to really be careful because this space is fluid with money, and money makes people do silly things.
Crazy things. I want to say a shout out to Pixel Vault though, guys, just because Vini was involved. Those guys are amazing. VGF, Video Game Freak. I mean, like, yeah,
I wanted
exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like,
dope.
what I think Tyler was getting to is what we'll get into tomorrow, right? Is that in the future, I do believe that there will be more potential for, correcting people's short-term memory, right?
Accountability.
Yeah, because I mean, the transparency provides accountability, but doesn't ensure it. So it's like I've been talking to different people, like Pulsar's doing a lot of things, but collecting data to be able to find like the verification points in transactions to say, okay, you can look at and give somebody a score. Like I think when we get to that point, right, and that's more tomorrow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Think about this.
Yes.
So Web 2 does have bad actors in it though too, or like what we call Web 2, just the web. Like Thoronis, great example. That woman snowed over like the best of the venture capital, like everybody, and she was a fraud. So again, like it happens everywhere. So we're gonna have bad actors no matter what. Blockchain does hold people more accountable. I agree with that, but at the same time, we just don't forget we're humans. We have short-term memories, and
Karma's a
everybody
bitch.
wants to get rich quick. Don't forget that. Everybody in the world wants to do the least amount of work for the most amount of reward. We're human. That's what we do.
So one other thought then when we're talking about community, because I think this is important, not just individual specific project communities, but the community at large. We're talking about influencers. That brings into discussion the topic of like social hierarchy, which I think is something is definitely a concern in this space. And I'm curious, as far as when you have new people that are coming into the space, like I was new just over a year ago. I remember what that was like. It was not as noisy. There were less bad actors, and it was a little bit more grassroots and organic where people were trying to go in the same direction as opposed to trying to get ahead of their peers. And so it led to having, making the right connections, networking, and really being able to further my own experiences and progress and education with Web3. I feel like while there is more of those opportunities being presented as far as education, I do still feel that as a community, we do need to figure out a way to help those that are new feel more included and be like that just because they don't have the following doesn't mean that they're ostracized from this movement.
I couldn't agree more. With that said, I was going to actually get into what are some red flags we should look for in a community. What are the ones that are like, wait a minute, what's the toxic communities? What does a bad Discord look like? What does a bad Twitter account look like? What's going on here, guys? Like, what do you guys think in terms of, like, what would make you think a red flag with a Discord, Tal? What do you think?
Well, there are a lot of components to red flags. There could be a lot of red flags that you can see in a project in different ways. So one of them definitely, an undoxed, team. You have to really check out the history, what they've done with, like we just discussed, to really Google search and do a research, not only on Google and so many platforms that you can actually see what's the history of that team, what have they done before? What are they involved in? And you know what? They could be anonymous. That's okay as well. But what is the team involved in, and what there has to be something that can indicate that these team are really the ones that you want to work with. These are the people that you want to be involved with, and that will be one thing that I would recommend to do. And another thing is, a lot of times you go to Discord, like you asked about Discord, and you can see they have, 20,000 people, but there's no engagement, there's no conversation inside. So you have to really dive into the community as well. Is there a conversation running up? Is there, are people really active? And who are these people? Maybe those people might be bots. Maybe those people are implemented there. Maybe you can look at their accounts and investigate deeper in a project in order to really invest in it. So those going to be a few, but I'm going to let you speak as well, so I don't take the stage.
Yeah, I think for me, a red flag is, I know, like I said earlier, the roadmaps, I don't like a lengthy roadmap with a bunch of check boxes for me. And I also think the red flags, to an extent, is a personal, like we all have personal red flags, right? On top of that.
I have a whole spreadsheet
right.
that I use.
And so like for me,
Share
lengthy
with me.
roadmaps where they have a bunch of check boxes, I don't like seeing that. I know for Twitter, like if they do a lot of giveaways and a lot of, I just, that stuff, I don't like the incentivization. That's not what attracts me, right? So for me, those are two red flags, right?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think Undoxed is interesting. What you brought up, Tal, it's like, we're venture capitalists, all of us. Everybody buying into a PFP project, like we're literally shareholders. Why would we invest in people? And I'm not hating on Undoxed people. I'm just saying,
Yes, you are.
no venture capitalist would ever invest in an Undoxed team. In reality, I've pitched well over 100 times. I've gotten venture capital. If they didn't know my credentials, my pedigree, like what I've done in the past, everything, like my credit score, I mean, they literally need to know everything, my shoe size. These guys like do their due diligence. We should be doing that too. It's super important. As a retail angel investor, is what you guys are, seated at the table. You guys are like, you're the board of directors, right? So at the end of the day, you're investing in companies, we're building companies. You should probably look at those companies and see what they've like, or see what those people have done in the past. So
I want to push back on that a little bit
Sure.
because I do agree with you, right? I do think that you do the work to know where your money's going, right? But I do think that we have to take account of where we are. We're shifting into an entirely new space, and there are going to be some new rules about how you play this game. And so when it comes to folks who can have all of that provenance of work, right? You can see what they've done, and you may not know who they are, but you can trust that the projects that they've touched before, the partnerships that they had, the transactions that they've dealt in, give you some indication that these people aren't going anywhere, because it's more about the reputation than the identity, right? And I think that that's the distinction that needs to be made, is that there are a lot of people who operate in this space for many reasons who don't want you to know who they are, but it doesn't mean that they aren't viable or bankable. It doesn't mean that they are nefarious, right? It just means that for whatever reason, they'd rather keep their identity separate from the work that they do. But if you can look at a history and say, oh, wow, okay, these people did X, Y, Z, like this was really awesome, they were working with this person, it's like, how do you not trust that, right? Like you see it and you sort of give people the same, if you knew who they were, you would still trust them. So it's like, what's the difference between knowing who they were and not, but seeing the track record, right? And so I think that that's the consideration that we all start to do now.
I agree.
I think also, like you said, we're early. And so some people don't want to be doxxed for other, like let's say Bill Gates dropped an NFT project, right? If he doxed himself, it's his project, he's going to attract the wrong people to his project, right? Because everyone's going to want to flip it. It's Bill Gates' NFT project, right? And so I think on the side of early, we are early, and the people that have ruined, the dox thing are the bad actors. And I think that's why, doxing has been a red flag, is because there's been so many undoxed people that have done bad things. But for me, if they're not doxed, it doesn't, turn me off, but it makes me look more into the project, right?
I do think it's 2022. 2022, people need to understand that the online world, it's their face. And yes, I agree with you 100%. This, one of the main projects, as you guys know, owned by a 14-year-old girl that, she came from nowhere. She was not doxxed and nothing. And we're all opting into her. And she's all over the Time and, and so Time magazine. And so I agree with you that people don't have to be doxxed. Obviously, they have to have good reputation online as well. If you search for them, don't find bad stuff on them. But it's 2022, and I think everyone needs to know that this is the era, this is the times where people are looking for information about you online. And if you're not there, you kind of not exist, and there's less chances I'll invest in someone that I know nothing about than someone that I can read about and see achievements and stuff like that. So
I'm sorry, I love this because I have both like perspectives, right? Like I'm a multi-sig signer on a project that was very adamant about me disclosing everything. And I'm fine because I'm a doxed individual, but I also lead innovation for a project that is led by a woman who is not doxed. And no one knows who
100%.
Betty is. But guess what? There's still 6,000 holders in that project, right? So I do see both sides of it. And I think that I love where we're going because we actually get to see in real time what it looks like for people to execute at the highest levels and be perfectly
Anonymous.
well-meaning, anonymous but well-meaning, right? Not be people who are out to scam, but
Take
literally
Pac, for example.
yeah, there's lots of people who are anonymous who are doing great things in
And
this
they never
space.
would have gotten chances too. Some of them never would have gotten chances to do so, right? Because a
Agreed.
lot of people would be like, you know what? You don't have the background, you don't have the credentials, we don't trust you. They now have an opportunity to do that. And I think that's really cool as well, because no credentials does not mean you should not be able to get to
Well,
No,
I want
exactly.
credentials.
We say the same.
I want credentials.
No,
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah, we say the
I
same
think the
thing.
14-year-old girl actually would not have, maybe she would not have gotten the
But
opportunity.
are you
So,
talking about
Lucy?
Nyla?
Yes, I was talking about Nyla.
Nyla's doxed though. We know who Nyla is.
Yes. Well, I don't. The beginning of the beginning. Did you know who
we
she
didn't.
was?
No, we didn't.
No, we
just
didn't know.
assumed.
But
Yeah.
I can say, at the end of the day, it's all about the story, right? So it's not about only people who are doxxed. You can be anonymous, but you have a good story. Like the girly now, I think it's the name of where if it's okay to drop down names here. But I'm just a supporter, right? I'm just an advocate for women in Web3. So she's a kid with her father who is helping her to actually create that art. And I think that's a beautiful story. And if there's no red flags around it, that there's no bad reputation for them. So I would actually go ahead and check out this project because there's a beautiful story about the father and his daughter. They're not unknown. And I am just involved emotionally in that. All right, I'm going to let you.
All right, it's time for some Q&A, guys. Let's do some Q&A.
Yeah, Lucas, we have some questions from our friends in the live stream. And we have Will here, who is manning the phone here with some of these questions. Go ahead, Will.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So some of these are a little lengthy, so I'm just going to paraphrase the questions to the panel. So the first one comes in, and they want the panel to speak around aspects of governance and managing the treasury as it relates to DAOs or NFT communities.
Who wants to take that one?
I'll lead it off. So it's actually something I wanted to touch on was as far as what type of culture is the project reinforcing? So is it just that degenerate culture where all they're talking about is the floor and they're cell shaming, they're doing things like that? Or is this a really professional organization like the Bees, for example, that actually has that consistency, has those professional aspects, the deliverables, and that includes, the DAO, the community governance, and being able to actually have a structure, an organization to that dynamic where things can actually get accomplished, the community can have a voice. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think we're at the point of true decentralization. You need strong leaders that are going to be able to advocate for their collectors, for the community.
I think that you're next, by the way. We're just quietly sitting over here, nodding, smiling and nodding. I'm not a fan of DAOs. I think that it's a buzzword. I think they're very, very important. And when they're done right, they do what they say they're going to do. But you got to remember that you have to get that collective. Everybody has to buy in, essentially, that this is the way it's going to be. So they're very important. When they're done right, they're incredibly powerful. But having that buy-in again from your customer base, from your investors, they have to take the time to then vote. And then you need to understand how you can transfer that voting power to somebody else. So it is a buzzword. If you want to run a company, run a company. If you want to run it decentrally, if that's a word, it is now, you then run it that way. But you do have to have that, we throw these words around, but just the word centralization isn't bad. It's just the way that the core team operates. So not, a huge fan of it, but when it's done right, then it's done right.
I wanted to say we used a word probably 500 times called doxed. Doxed. Yeah, dox means it's just revealing an identity of who they are. So doxing yourself or doxing somebody is revealing who that person is, their name, their previous work experience, where they're from, their address, whatever it may be, just revealing their identity. But as far as this topic and the question of governance when it comes to DAOs and treasury management, I think that is one of the most exciting parts in this space now, is because we haven't figured out the exact best model for it. And it's something that we can still tinker with, and we have the tools to where we can develop and innovate around to think, okay, what is the best structure that we can do? We've seen governments for thousands of years how they've operated, and we can take practices of what they've done and implement them into tiny communities or even macro communities. And you can really give empowerment to individuals by letting them make decisions for organizations. And that's something that becomes incredibly powerful when you get that buy-in from people and give them that opportunity to vote. I think one of the biggest things, Tyler said something about leaders, is you can design a structure to where not a hierarchy, but maybe it's like sub-DAOs or subgroups that are leading the project. So there's something we said a lot of times today too, is community. That's something that I think is emerging as a new field that we haven't discussed upon when it comes to NFTs, is they offer community management as a role. And that was never a role before, and there was never a need for that. But you could, as token holders, you can elect a leader for your community manager. You can elect your core developers. You can be a part of that governance of the DAO. And then when it comes to the treasury, there's only a very simple thought of it right now, is you just have this core treasury and everybody votes what to do with it. But you can begin to get really creative with the way you manage that treasury, whether it's as individuals, whether it's portions of the DAO and not as a whole, or in other aspects. So this is a topic I get really excited about, and I can talk about for hours and hours and hours, because it's something that's wide open. It's a blank canvas, and we can really begin just to use our brains to figure out what's worked in the past, take parts of previous democracies and implement them into micro communities and as well as macro communities.
Sorry, Lucas, just one thing. I just wanted to add that there's ways of empowering your community and your collectors without a token, without a decentralized autonomous organization, which is a DAO. You know, for example, there's one project called Jenkins the Valet, and I have just one of that project. I'm not affiliated or anything like that, but I have been following since the beginning. And what started out as a really kind of like abstract concept, just due to the leadership, due to the consistency, due to the community buying into that idea of, we are going to help form a story together, like a novel of sorts, using our IP that we've been granted. That's powerful. And you don't need a DAO structure to empower them and use their IP from their NFTs to offer that type of opportunity.
I'd like to say that we are still figuring it out. I love that you said that. And of course, what you said is amazing as well. So we all are still figuring it out. Lawyers, CPAs, crazy amounts of people are still literally like writing the rules. I was in a space with 3 or 4 lawyers and 2 CPAs, and they're like, yeah, we're still figuring out the rules and what the government's going to allow us to do and not allow us to do. We're writing the rules, and they're going to tell us if we're right or wrong eventually. So that's what's going on. Let's go with one more question.
Can I add one thing to that? Just that DAOs are a spectrum, and we've been saying like we're figuring out the best way. There are no one best ways. Every individual DAO, if you have a DAO, because again, you don't have to have that
Should
structure.
just be a community fund.
Yeah, exactly. But the way that it operates can be very specific to the group of people. So just to be clear about that, like there's no this is a DAO.
No set of rules.
Yeah, there's no
Exactly.
like this is a DAO. It's like your governance can be split across 100 people or split across 10. Right? It's up to each individual group to decide how that structure looks, and that's the thing that people are figuring out for themselves, not for everybody.
Makes sense. Right?
It's a Lucas Bean thing. Get in his space, you'll understand.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the last question that we're going to flip up to the panel today is, to what extent do you see the responsibility of community safety against bad actors? Is it the responsibility of the community builders or each individual community member to be responsible for that?
Safety?
I'd like to say that I'm going to start off. Okay, I think it's actually up to the team to monitor bad actors, because if you leave it up to the community, you get this like mob of people piling on top of this person that they think is bad. Maybe at the end of the day, I think it's up to the people who built the community. They can actually, I almost think of like revocable tokens of these bad actors, like take it back for them buy it back from them, whatever the case may be. I think that's a good way of managing bad actors out of the space. I don't think the community should dogpile these people and like harass them off of Twitter or out of a Discord. I think that's like the worst way, but that's my opinion.
I actually think it's everybody's responsibility. I think it's every single individual person in this ecosystem's responsibility to call out the bullshit. If you see it, you call it out. And it's if you're building a community and you run a project, you have to be responsible to those people because again, they're investing in you in some way, right? So you take every opportunity you can to keep those people safe. The people in that community take every possible opportunity to keep each other safe. But outside that community, every individual person has to be responsible for the people, whether they're just sitting next to them in a space or in a public forum with them. Like, you should be doing all that you can to make sure that you share the information that you get when something's going down, right? Like it's a very interesting idea, but I think we can all be responsible to one another.
I think it depends on the case a lot of times. I 100% agree with all what you said, but also when you ask who is responsible, the team or the community, it really depends on the case. Sometimes the bad actor is on the team, so it's the responsibility of the community and the rest of the team and themselves to take upon fixing it or keeping that community secured and safe. So it really depends on what's the case. But again, just like everyone said here, the community has to be involved and the team has to be involved and everything has to be outside there. And it is really a case matter, to my opinion.
If it's a team, though, you could just sell your PFP. Like, you know what? I don't want to be a part of this project anymore.
We did that with DNS, right? Like there was a big deal and I personally took a side and that was my personal decision. But I do think that to what I was saying, and just to be clear, like if somebody knows that there's someone who's part of a team that has been doing really crappy stuff because there's text messages floating around and if the text message comes into your DM and you don't publicly share that, you're colluding with that, right? This is what I'm saying. So it's like I think it's every individual person's responsibility to be as aware and helpful to the larger community. Because if everyone says no because they know this person's like important and they say, oh, I'm gonna keep it to myself, then that person is allowed to continue, right? So I think everybody has to take ownership of that.
Yeah, so
last point.
I'm gonna be a little bit of the dissident up here. Like I said, this is kind of a precursor for tomorrow with future of Web3. But I'll say this: we're all accountable for ourselves at the end of the day. And so, if I get scammed, which has happened, I lost $100,000 on Christmas night, and it was because of my own limitations, because I didn't practice due diligence, because I didn't disseminate information for myself. And I have to be accountable for that. I can't blame that on others. I can't blame that on the scam artists, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who are pressing that button to actually execute the transaction. With that said, I will say to kind of play devil's advocate that while we do need to encourage better practices as a community, we do have to try to be inclusive and focus on making things more equitable. We can't expect that everyone is going to want to go or is willing to go in the same direction. I personally don't believe in the whole WAGMI, we are gonna make it, or we are all going to make it. I personally don't buy into that because I think it's kind of like groupthink. I think it's trying to encourage people, like I had mentioned before, a social hierarchy. They're trying to encourage people in their direction to cater to their interests, to their NFT portfolio, if you will. I believe that what we're going to see, and this is probably the third time I've seen it in the past year. First, it happened with NBA Top Shot, then it happened with Zed Run. As the ecosystem scales, you get a better idea of what it's going to resemble long term, and it's not going to be that idealistic utopia that we all wish it would be. And so I think having realistic expectations and understanding that not everyone is going to go in the same direction, and that we can control ourselves and we can choose where we direct our energy and where we choose to harness it. And I think when you adopt that mindset, you're going to be much better off.
Well said. Great last point. I think it's time Yep. So thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for having us. Thanks, NFT
Beehaw!
Arizona.